Hello there, my name is Christopher Constant, and I'm the Vice Chair of the Anchorage Assembly, and I want to welcome you to the TrAKtion Conference here at Merrill Field. I want to say thank you to Launch Alaska for their amazing work in innovation for aviation in Alaska. And I'm really glad to bring you into this neighborhood, which most people wouldn't know about it, but we are a historic neighborhood. This is the Fairview district. A long time ago, this was a segregated neighborhood in which poor and African-American people were redlined into. And what's happened over the years is there's been some deterioration and people have kind of left, and so there is a real opportunity here for major improvements in the neighborhood. And this, the Launch Alaska project, is probably the first and best innovation that I've heard of coming into this neighborhood. One of the reasons why is this neighborhood is rich in history and opportunity. Back in the World War II era, this was actually national forest land where people were living in camps and tents, and they set up a community that was very vibrant and robust. But then in the 60s, they came through and drove a highway right through it, which is a story that's pretty common in America. And since then, the neighborhood has been slowly and steadily deteriorating and waiting for someone to come in with a good idea on how to transform this part of town, this part of the north, into a vibrant community that has an industry that supports it. And so aviation clearly has been in the neighborhood for as long as there's been a neighborhood. This was one of the original airstrips that they landed on as they were exploring aviation and heading over to Asia for the first time in small airplanes. And so this place is rich in history and rich in its connection to the neighborhood. And so when I was speaking with Isaac about the possibility of this project, immediately what I saw was the potential to connect the vision of Launch Alaska to the neighborhood housing stock and in fact to the school that's just right down the street. Parents have taken their kids out of this neighborhood because the perception of the neighborhood as being that place or over there, the other side of the tracks. And so the neighborhood is ready for someone to come in with a big idea and to start to transform it. And so one of the visions that I have when I think about Launch Alaska and the elementary school is a program that takes kids and inspires them and teaches them about the basic principles of aviation. In fact, there used to be a project with a group called the 99s. The 99s were a group of aviating women Alaskans, and they would come in here and do training classes with the elementary school kids on the principles of aviation and even take some of the kids for rides, which was kind of a mind-blowing experience to these children. So the theory then is Launch Alaska connecting with the kids at the school. My hope is that one of those kids is on a rocket ship and heads to Mars. Because why not? This neighborhood is just as great as any other neighborhood in America when you get down to it. And so the projects that Launch Alaska is working on, which energy, climate resiliency, aviation, innovation, unmanned aviation, all kinds of technologies. This urban and airfield interface is very rare and it's a great opportunity. I look forward to seeing what Launch Alaska is able to accomplish with this project. You know, as aviation technology evolves, there are some people who believe that unmanned vehicles have the possibility of pushing pilots to the side. But the fact is, if you come to Alaska, which I suggest you do, launching from this airfield, you can be in the most wild of environments, and people are never going to give up the opportunity to get up in the air and explore and be out there. I mean, this is a central hub where people go hunting and flight seeing. They actually take goods to their homes when they live out into the rural areas. They take equipment and supplies to their cabins that they're building in the woods. And so when Launch Alaska sets to task of bringing innovation, this isn't a threat to pilots and their industries. It's an opportunity to grow the industry in Alaska and bring people from around the world, because again, this unique location, its unique geography, the space that's around us, the national designation for unmanned flight testing, we have so many things going for us that this is an ideal location for that work. It doesn't cost us jobs, it creates jobs. One of the more interesting elements of this project was how the vision of Launch Alaska expressed by Isaac matched so closely with the community council's idea of their vision for the future. Merrill Field has long been, in some ways, a thorn to the community because of noise and because of issues of airplanes flying over people's homes. But under the new leadership with Ralph Gibbs, there's been kind of a renaissance in the relationship between the neighborhood and the operation here. And why that's important, Fairview, the community council, has long been envisioning this area in its strategic plan as an innovation zone. So when I heard Isaac start talking about the potential of innovation with aviation, it immediately struck a chord that this is tied directly with what the neighborhood's been asking for. And what that looks like specifically is the fact that we have a number of deteriorated buildings on the very edge of the airfield here that are now being repurposed, and Launch Alaska is aiming to take over those buildings as we make a substantial investment in retrofitting them and getting them back to the use. Some of the best ideas that we've heard about are project laboratories where they're doing experimental work in aviation, where they're doing kind of a maker space, and where they have housing, short-term housing for pilots who want to come in and kind of innovators who want to come in and do exploratory work. That, coupled with the increase of simulators and the improvements that are coming through some funding that's been made available for the interface between the neighborhood and the airfield, means that this project on its own merits meets the goals and heart of the neighborhood's vision for itself, which to me is a very exciting aspect of the project. So the question always comes up, why Alaska? And if you haven't been here, you should come here. You will experience a different way of life. Unlike most of the country here, we have the best of both worlds. We have very high levels of diversity in our community. We have the urban hub right here in Anchorage, and yet we are moments away from the most rural parts of America. And what that means is there is tons of space up here for exploring and testing and trying out new technologies. And in fact, Alaska has long been a hub for aviation innovation. When you think of a tundra tire, these big tires that are used for landing on landing areas that just aren't quite runways, Alaska was the place that invented those technologies. And so coming to Alaska to do this work puts you in a context of a long history of aviation innovation. And this is just the best place to be in the world if you like to fly. So we've talked a little bit about the neighborhood and the fact that it's long been an area of deterioration and struggle. It's also a neighborhood that's long been envisioning a brighter future for itself. And the vision for this neighborhood tightly binds to the ideas that are brought forward by Launch Alaska. What that's going to look like when this neighborhood is transformed is we're going to see a building stock that's been renewed with energy systems that are for the future and not the best technology the 1950s have to offer. We're going to see the interface between the airfield being a place where people want to come and hang out, beautiful and also transformative in terms of the aviation technologies that are available to us. And so what I see as the long-term vision is that this fulfills the promise of creating an innovation hub for the North, where we can be bringing technologies to bear that we need for the future.
Merrill Field Airport sits in the middle of multiple Opportunity Zone neighborhoods that have experienced decades of divestment and are some of Anchorage's most diverse. Plans to build an innovation center at the Merrill Field Airport in Anchorage are underway. However, community engagement is vital to the success of this project. This seed money will be tailored to growing partnerships in education to directly benefit these local communities that are traditionally sidelined by high-tech investment. Partnerships with educational institutions will focus on STEM programming to train the next generation of entrepreneurs in these communities. Emphasis will also be on programming for all ages through a speaker series, the Arctic program through the University of Alaska, and a shared space for multiple public demonstrations. These efforts will foster local economic and educational engagement in these underserved communities, while delivering direct benefit to the aviation startup industry and larger industry partners through collaborative testing spaces with constant consumer feedback.